All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending where you are in the world. I hope you're having a great day so far. My name is Heather Grant. I am one of the community admins here at the Maintenance Community by Upkeep. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. If you are not already a member of the maintenance community on Slack, we would love to have you join us. I will drop the sign up link in the chat in just a moment. Today we have Joel Levitt joining for a presentation on stories of preventive maintenance. I know it's going to be a little bit different and really interesting, so I'm excited to see it. I'll let Joel introduce himself in just a moment, and then we'll get underway there. The recording from our session today will be available in the maintenance community Slack tomorrow, and Joel himself actually is already available there to answer any questions as well. So please feel free to share either the recording of this webinar or the invitation to Slack directly with anyone you know who would benefit from hearing some more of Joel's expertise. Then you'll notice your cameras and microphones are not turned on today. So what you'll want to do if you have any questions throughout the presentation is please use the chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen. We will collect questions throughout the presentation as we go, and then we'll have a few minutes at the end to answer any questions that come up. Anything we don't get to, we'll be sure to answer offline, so feel free to ask away. That is all from me. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Joel, for making the time. And I'll turn it over to you to get started.
Excellent. Hope everybody's doing well. We're under a flood watch, so I'm sure it'll be really exciting, but not yet. So this is completely different because my challenge was how would I successfully teach some of the basic concepts of preventive maintenance to people that don't have a lot of maintenance background, to people that are new to the field. I really want to, how do I convey this to them? So this project is the answer to that, and I'm still finishing it and still working on it. So if anybody has any ideas, please look me up. Before we use an acronym like PM, I want to try to avoid being misunderstood. So PM is not panic maintenance or percussive maintenance. Remember percussive maintenance, where the way you get it working is you whack it with a stick? It's also not pencil whip maintenance or project management for that matter. It's part of planned maintenance, but it's not planned maintenance. So this is preventive maintenance. Just to be clear about that, I do get some people that think that it's panic maintenance and other things. Now, one of the things about PM is that I don't want you to fool yourself, because PM, there's things that are not part of PM. And in fact, I see bosses a lot, people that are above maintenance want something from PM which is not part of PM. So, PM won't put iron in a machine. That's what we used to say. But it won't give horsepower to a underpowered or too small machine. PM doesn't deal with misoperation and operator driver abuse. It doesn't deal with incompetent mechanics. It doesn't deal with random failures. It doesn't deal with bad fuel, bad lubricants, or cheap will fit or counterfeit parts. And biggest thing of all, PM can't fix stupid. So we want to get people in the habit of thinking about PM in a way that's appropriate to PM. Now, you are probably a maintenance professional. So I'm going to say that there's nothing that I say in this talk that should be news to you. If it is news to you, you might want to reread Ramesh's book or my book or any of the other books. But these are things that I want to convey to a new party. That's the goal here. So these are things you should have heard of before. But test me to see if this explanation would work for somebody that doesn't know much about this. It's easy to talk to people that have spent, 10, 20 years doing this kind of stuff. But when you talk to people that are just coming in that are kind of, neophytes at maintenance, they could be, master of other things, but in the maintenance world. So the first thing is like, what is it? So it has 4 parts. One is you have to identify the enemies, and the enemies are the failure modes. So you have to understand the failure modes to design PM. Now, most people are just given a PM, so they don't have to do any design. So for them, they start with number 2, which is inspecting the asset to predict the future. So you look at a piece of wire rope like this, and you see the picture, and you know that it's not a good idea to leave that wire rope running, particularly if it's on a hoist that hoists stuff over people. The third thing that PM does is it extends the life of the asset. It literally avoids, postpones the breakdown. So this part of it is called, I call it TLC, tighten, lubricate, clean. That actually extends the life. And the fourth part is to do any action to correct problems. So if you find a problem that you can't fix right then you have to put in a work order, which is a corrective work order. And then you correct it. And that's the PM cycle. So I want to just, what are we supposed to be doing? Well, I invented this little mighty maintainer. I don't know. My girlfriend doesn't like it that much. I kind of think that, she's a cute mite. So reliability is the ability of your asset to do what it was designed to do under the conditions it was designed to do it. And maintenance activity is any activity that sustains the reliability or returns the asset to a reliable state. And good maintenance always manages risk. So we mentioned extend the life of the asset, postpone or prevent the failure. Inspect the asset, like detect when something has gone wrong, defective, damaged, deteriorated. Short repair is repairs you do at the same time as the PM. So those are the basic points. So how's this supposed to work? Really simple. Almost, I'm going to say 99% of all PM is going to follow this little chart. Okay. The little chart says CMMS produces a task list. On the task list is a bunch of tasks. One task says inspect the bearing. You inspect the bearing, you look at it, you listen to it, you feel it, or you examine it with technology. And let's say there's something wrong. Let's say the sucker's squealing or it's, vibrating. So the person doing the inspection writes up a corrective order to a code, we call it a R&R, remove and replace the bearing. And that corrective order is linked back to the PM task list work order. So there's now a child work order, if you will, from the PM work order to do this job. So the job, the repair and replace work request, is turned into a work order. The job enters the backlog. The job is planned. The job is scheduled. The job is executed. Boom. We go back to the PM at the next interval. So that was a lot of things, but the point is that this is just how it works. I mean, this is just how it works virtually everywhere. Now, What are the kind of tasks that make things last longer? The biggest thing I think is cleaning. We have a tough relationship with cleaning because if you look at some of the maintenance people's areas, clean is not one of the things you would use to describe the area. So we have a bit of an issue there. You also see people, I remember I was in a shop that rebuilt Caterpillar engines in the Gulf, Persian Gulf. And they had the engine they were rebuilding, and then sitting all around it were coffee cans full of either new parts, broken parts, used parts, in various states of disassembly. And the mechanics were working on it and doing whatever they were doing. But and there was dirt, and there was, it's like, how good of a repair is that going to be? So cleaning is really important in my book. Housekeeping, general housekeeping, specific housekeeping, and keeping repairs clean so you don't get contamination in repairs. The second big thing is lubrication, and that's a whole science that's completely separate from maintenance. It's called tribology. Now, lubrication, the challenge there is to get the right lubricant and in the right frequency and the right amount, and to get it in there without contaminating anything is kind of a big challenge for some people. So that's the second thing. If you keep things properly lubricated, you have a much better shot at having it last longer. I started in the maintenance field in 1970. I worked aboard a ship and worked in the engine room, and I was like given the opportunity to be the oiler. I was actually lower than the oiler. And, I don't know, somebody in science will find giant gobs of molybdenum grease at the bottom of the ocean, because I thought, if a little is good, more must be better, So lubrication, it's actually, there's a lot to know. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the maintenance field haven't taken the time to really look at that deeply. Tightening bolts. I mean, this might sound, ridiculous, but loose bolts sink ships. I guess it's loose lips, but loose bolts are a problem, and misapplied bolts, and bolts that are not torqued correctly, and the wrong bolts. And if you look at a lot of assets, you'll see that people deliberately leave some bolts out because they're a pain in the neck to put back. So proper bolting is the third thing. So these three things, according to the Japanese Institute of Plant Engineering, their study, this is now a long time ago, but they found that well over 50% were just related to bolting and cleaning, like over 50%. Now, this is a philosophical conversation, philosophy. It's the difference between looking at something and seeing something. Now, when you look at the definition in the dictionary, it's kind of the same, but looking is more about what happens at the retina, is more about looking. So looking is kind of the mechanical thing of pointing your eyes at something and looking at it. Now, seeing has the added piece to understanding and interpreting what you're looking at. And in maintenance, I think we need to distinguish looking from seeing. So we spend a lot more time, we tell people all the time, I mean, every day you tell people to check the belts. But how much time do we spend showing people belts in various failure cycles? The alligatoring, the fraying, the too tight, too loose, all that kind of stuff. So people can look at the belts, but unless they have the experience and knowledge behind it, they can't see the belts. So we have this, giant machine here, and the kind of Yoda figure is telling his Padawans, what do you see? And one of them says, well, I see it's dirty. And that's actually good. But the question is, it's dirty, but can you also see that it's leaking oil? See, one of the things with dirt, as you know, is that it covers up leaks sometimes. In fact, the leak and the leak in the dirt, kind of work together to form a shell around the equipment that you can't see anything else that's going on. Now, Rupesh asks, can PM be taken care of under a TPM environment? And Rupesh, not only can it be, but because of the proximity and the complexity of the activity, it's sometimes much smarter to use a TPM approach, because a maintenance person to go all the way out there and to lubricate something takes a lot of travel time, whereas an operator who's making rounds there anyway might be able to lubricate it just as effectively. The only thing with TPM that you want to understand is that the people doing it do not have a lifetime of maintenance experience behind them. So when you say the word tight, they don't know what that means. If you say, check the belts, they don't know what that means. So we need to teach this seeing thing even more to operators, because they don't have the experience behind them. Now we're starting to use high-tech stuff, like that's the cool thing that's going on. And, it's like fun, and there's a lot of excitement, and there's tons of vendors. And, if you go to the trade shows, if you go to an in-person trade show now, you get good swag from the vendors, because, people that will come out in this environment, they're dedicated. So you get the really good stuff, little tape measures and stuff. But I want you to think about this, that all these IIoT, Industrial Internet of Things sensors, are another way of looking at the equipment. And they can look at it like nobody's business. Every second they transmit the vibration, the temperature, all that stuff. So that's great. But all that stuff doesn't become seeing until you apply analytics to it, which is kind of like, in a human sense, like knowledge and experience. Until you apply the analytics, you're not using it to see things. You're using it to look at things. Now, there is something called mandatory maintenance and mandatory PM. In fact, in Pennsylvania, we have to get our vehicles inspected every year. But the thing that's crazy about that is that the stuff that they inspect is actually written into the law of inspection in Pennsylvania. So I don't know what's going to happen with electric vehicles, but you have to check some things as part of the inspection legally that, new generation vehicles might not have anymore. So that'll be kind of interesting. I think it's a little weird to put it in they actually passed a law with the language of the inspection in it. Kind of interesting. I'd love to know the story behind doing it that way, rather than passing a law for inspection and then having a regulator write the rule. Now, one of the things that people do with PM is they give it to new people, because it actually is a good way to learn the plant and know your way around. You do PM for a couple months and you know where everything is in the plant, and that's really good. The problem has to do with the difference between looking and seeing. Somebody new to the plant will not know what they're looking for, unless they spend 20 years in a different, same type of plant, but a different company. That's a different story. But, when I was doing that lubricating in the ship, I remember the engineer I was reported to would say, like, if anything is effed up, please come and tell me, and particularly if it's unusually hot. So I was like this guy. I said, yeah, boss, absolutely. I was 18 years old. And I had no idea what the stuff did, or whether, as hot as it was, whether that was unusual or not. So he's asking me to see where I was barely able to look because I didn't even know what I was looking at. So the most common response from a maintenance person when they don't understand something is they say, no problem, right? Because it's hard for maintenance folks to admit that they're ignorant about something. They may not even know that they're ignorant. But, this is the thing that we face, is that we have to assume that people need support the first time they look at something. So that's something that we want to make part of our PM. Now, I wanted to go back to the beginning, like nobody goes back to the beginning anymore. So the need for PM was established plus or minus about 13 billion years ago. The Big Bang that started up our universe, if you accept the scientific explanation. So it started with the Big Bang, and one of the rules, there's some basic rules or laws of the universe, like the speed of light and the law of gravity and stuff like that. But one of the laws is the law of entropy that started when the Big Bang happened. And the law of entropy is that everything runs down. It goes from high energy states to lower energy states. So we have this universe that's like a giant manual clock with clockworks in it that's wound up. And it's been going for 13 billion years, and it's likely to go for another 7 or 10 billion more. Okay, so we're kind of in the middle of this picture. But individual things degrade as a natural phenomenon. In other words, you may randomly break something in your car. It's really unusual to randomly have something fix itself. I mean, it seems to happen occasionally, but if you think about it, things go from wherever they are, organized, working, to not working. Remember, for a machine to work, 1,000 different parts have to work right. For a machine to break, one of them has to not work or break. So that's what we're dealing with. So our job in maintenance is not to stop entropy, but it's to hold it at bay long enough that we can get the value out of the asset that makes our money, or takes kids to school, or houses the offices or whatever. So we do maintenance so that we can use our asset long enough for our purpose. And that's all we have to do. 100 years from now, the building falls down. So what? And it'll mean something to them if they don't keep maintaining it. But for me, My job is to keep it from falling down now. PM has a history. You know, I'm sure that the people who built the pyramids, you know, their chariots, they probably had some PMs on their wheels. I mean, this is evidence here in the slide. You can see in the at the bottom of the cuneiform tablet that shows the guy fixing the chariot, although that's not real cuneiform. But you can get the idea that they probably, you know, didn't want stuff to break down, so they took care of it. Probably the Romans were the biggest PM people in the world. I mean, these folks built 50,000 miles of roads throughout Europe and England and the UK. And, you know, they would roam, they were Romans, and they would conquer, and then they would build roads. And the thing was that each principality that they passed through got the responsibility for taking care of the roads that the Romans built. So this is really good. I mean, it's kind of like the feds here, you know, give you money to build a road, and then you have to take care of it after that. So that was their thing. But they had a lot of inspections. They had inspectors. They had activities. They cleaned you know, where the water would drip off the road, and there were these metal keys made out of lead that they would pound in that would hold the stones in place. And, you know, people would occasionally steal the keys because, you know, the metal was valuable. So they had to inspect to see that the keys weren't gone, you know, because then the road would get unstable. And even our George Washington actually made a speech to the troops at Valley Forge about taking care of their weapons, and basically said, listen, you take care of your weapon, you clean it, and you take care of it, because a cracked or jammed weapon, you're going to die if the British are, you know, facing you. So, you know, pretty straightforward stuff. And militaries traditionally all over the world have been very, very intensive on maintenance. And if you ever look at any of the documentation in the, you know, the Army motor pool for maintenance of the, you know, the Humvees or trucks, you find it's very intensive, very documented. It allows somebody that's, you know, 18, 19, 20 years old to be dropped into a theater of operation and pick up the manual and actually do good maintenance, you know, so because that's what they need to happen, you know, in the military. Now, there's a couple of secrets that we don't tell people right off the bat, and I think we should probably tell them. One secret is, the more often you touch a machine, the more likely it is that you're going to screw it up. Okay? So just think about this. Every time you touch a machine, you run the risk of doing something to it, getting dirt in it, messing with it in some way that causes it to fail. Okay? So this field, or this type of failure, is called an iatrogenic failure. An iatrogenic failure, or iatrogenesis, is the class of failure. This is from the medical field, where it talks about the illnesses that are caused by doctors treating people. That's iatrogenic illness. And it's a whole field of study, you know, in medicine, obviously, because I think I read the statistic that in the US, 100,000 people a year are given the wrong dosages of medications and have some bad reaction or die even from that. So it's like, it happens all the time. In maintenance, I don't remember until I started thinking about this. I don't remember anybody talking about this. But the other part of this is that you want to do the least intrusive maintenance as you possibly can. Because the more intrusively you go into the machine, the more likelihood is that you're going to screw it up. We have people on this call that probably started on tools. And if I could sit across from you and say, did you ever screw up a piece of equipment while you were fixing it in some way that made it way worse than it was when you got there? And there's only really two answers to this. One is yes, and the other is they must be lying, because to get experience on the tools, you're going to make mistakes. So iatrogenic failure is a big part of the learning to be great at a maintenance. That's because you had iatrogenic failures, and that taught you not to, screw around on that particular thing. So that's the first secret, is that whenever we're looking at a PM, we want to be sure that the goodness of the PM outweighs the badness of one of our dudes touching the equipment. Now, the second thing, and this is, it's kind of funny. It's something to think about. And that is, I've been with people that are really, really, on top of this PM thing, and they write out these beautiful PM task lists, and they're really clear about the looking versus seeing, and they're very, it's like a work of art. It's a Michelangelo of PM tasking. And the problem is that when you watch the mechanic, possibly, they've got the PM folded up in their back pocket and they don't refer to it. So, like, you just built this monument, and the person using it, or where it could do some good, is not looking at it. So the second secret is that the task list is useless unless people use it. I mean, that sounds weird, but it's pretty straightforward. The task list is just a piece of paper, but without really doing it, it's not really working. So how do you do this? I've had a couple situations where a big boss of the company, when I was doing training, came in, and I'm saying like the plant manager or the president of the company or somebody really, big, came into the room and talked to the maintenance people and told them how important what they were doing was. That happens like virtually never happens. It's happened to me a couple times in 600 courses in companies. And we have to convey that what we do is really important to the success of the enterprise. So that's one of the things. The next thing is this issue of ownership. When as a consultant, one of the things you do is what's called day in a life of, where you'll follow somebody and just record what they do. Well, with PM, I've modified that, and I go out with the PM people, and it's a very informal conversation where what I want to do is I want to like talk about the PM and see if the person has any ideas at all about making it easier, faster, or better in some way, right? So, and I record this stuff, And then when I get back and, we've talked it through with the PM person, I talk it through with the person I'm working for. And I say, here's some recommendations. Can you put any of this into action like the next time that PM comes up? Like, can you change it? And if you change it and the person notices it, they will start to feel ownership over that PM. And if you ran your entire PM program where people made recommendations and most of those recommendations were accepted and became part of the process, ownership would not be an issue, and people not doing the PMs would be less of an issue. Some people make PM a game. Like one guy I met he had went out ahead of the PM for he did a weekly PM, and he went out ahead of it. And he put little cards in the equipment where people would have to open it. And it said, "You win, see me." And he made a deal with the local fast food place for little gift certificates. And he didn't even pay for the gift certificates. They were like $1 off coupons. And he gave that to people when they found the little piece of paper. So, man, people tore that equipment apart looking for their little piece of paper because he put one of them on each route. I don't know about that, but you understand what I'm saying is that it was like a game, and that you got something for it. So that was really good. And the last thing I wanted to just mention to you is that the maintenance people love toys. I mean, tools. I don't do much maintenance work anymore, except, around the house and stuff. I have, it's like if I get Northern Tool or one of the other tool catalogs, it's like, I don't know if there's even a word for this. It's like tool porn. You look at these I could really use that if I ever did this or that. I don't think I ever met a tool that I didn't think that I could use. So buying tools, I have one of the tools that I use is a little infrared thermometer, and I use that on my barbecue grill to see where the hot spots are. So at $20, everybody could have one of them, and they could look at electrical or whatever they want to look at. We also want to add diagrams to the machines so that everybody can see where to do stuff, Oh, good. Amal, that is really interesting. I've never seen that study, but that makes sense. Now, PM optimization is great. I love this, Raul. Again, at least doing it wrong or not doing it or overdoing it or underdoing it gives you worse results than doing the PM. But PM optimization itself is really a good idea. The issue is that if the person's doesn't have the list, it doesn't matter how optimized it is because they're not going to be seeing it. So I agree with that comment about the PM programs. You should be looking at it overall, and that one of the questions is, okay, this is the answer to the question, but one of the questions is a PM task worth it? And the worth it, is it a good PM task? And there's 4 little things I want you to look at when you're looking at a task. One is it worth it economically? Like, are we spending $500 to avoid a $50 failure? And this happens. The second thing is it engineered correctly? In other words, is it looking at actual failure modes? The third thing is it manageable? In other words, you have to schedule it. It has to come out. You have to have people that can do it, and all the kind of stuff like that. So is it manageable? And then the P of WEMP is, can people do it? In other words, we have the problem of boredom, and people turn into like zombies when they do too much PM work. And we want to be sure that it's doable from a boredom point of view. And also, like if it's a 500-foot walk to get to a thing to exercise a valve, a lot of people are just not going to do it. So you have to understand that. And this conversation with Raul and Ahmed, I'm following it. I agree with this, that you want to be looking at making sure that the PM you're doing makes sense, and you're looking at the failures, and you're making sure that the PMs are appropriate for what's actually going on. So here's some little tips and tricks. He says, the boss is going to be so happy because everybody knows if a little grease is good, a lot is better. I'll make him proud of me. This is more like my approach to greasing. And too much greasing causes heat and yuckiness. Here's a person that comes out of their PM as a zombie because they just spent 10 hours in the hole doing PM. And we've got to be careful because it creates a safety problem. And it also creates a situation where the person can't really see anymore. And then here's Pigsty Pete. You can't do good work in dirty places. So, take a shower, clean up the place, and work clean. And then enthusiastic Ed. A little bit of tight is good. A lot of tight may be very bad. And then here's Lou, who's always on the loo. Pencil whipping his PM. The problem there is that he could create a safety problem. He's not doing the PM and he's causing problems. And then always, and I leave this up to the guys, always reduce the hours it takes to do the PM. So we have what's called maintenance elimination for getting rid of maintenance tasks. Maintenance prevention that prevents the deterioration in the first place. And maintenance improvement, making the tasks easier, faster, better. So that's it, folks.
Awesome. Well, that was super cool. I love the illustrations. It's fun seeing yourself in an illustration as well. I thought that was a really kind of cool and special part. I'm excited to kind of follow along this project. I really appreciate you taking us through a preview and some details about what it's all about. I know that you've been involved in the chat this entire time, so I see a couple of people still typing and chatting away there, but I don't think we have any new kind of questions or anything like that. Yeah, it's looking like just some more experience and thank yous. Any final thoughts or anything like that before we go ahead and close out otherwise?
And thank you, everybody, for making nice mentions.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Joel, for taking the time and showing us your new project. I appreciate it. And I know everyone else did too.
Great, Heather. Thanks.
See you all next time.
Yep.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.